Hi and welcome to Sustainability, unit working with complexity, uncertainty and different perceptions of problems and solutions. We will look at questions such as what does ecological diagnosis of the present reveal? And what visions for a sustainable future it contains? Talking about planetary boundaries, sustainable development goals, and ways of reimagining the world towards something different. This model, created by Global Footprint Network, is based on calculation of ecological footprint. Ecological footprint is comparing speed with which we are consuming everything that nature is offering to us, so-called natural resources, and amount of the consumed resources, with biocapacity of the planet to regenerate. If we imagined that overnight everyone on Earth would adopt lifestyle of one of these countries, this is how many planets we would need to sustain chosen lifestyle and consumption level. And we can see that humanity as a whole is currently living as if we had 1.6 planets at our disposal. But Earth's material and life forms that can be safely used each year is just 50 billion tons. That includes everything from wood to plastic, fish, livestock, minerals, metals, all the material that we consume. And right now, we are using about 80 billion tons each year, which is way over the safe limit. And we can see impact all around us in rates of species extinction, habitat loss, and climate disruption. We are living in a planetary overshoot. Earth's overshoot day is a date by when we have used more from nature than our planet can renew in the whole year. For the rest of the year, we are deepening our ecological deficit. Earth's overshoot day for humanity as a whole fell in 2017 on August the 2nd. And on the picture, we can see how quickly are different countries consuming what could be seen as their share of global natural resources. From educators' perspective, resources from Global Footprint Network provide opportunity to explore sustainability of different lifestyles and to ask questions about their impact on others and on the planet. And here's another model coming, created by Stockholm Resilience Center, Planetary Boundaries, a safe space for humanity. These researchers identified 9 planetary boundaries within which humanity can continue to develop and thrive for generations to come. But crossing these boundaries would generate irreversible environmental changes. We can see 3 zones there. Green is safe zone. Yellow is zone of uncertainty, which means increasing risk. And red zone is beyond uncertainty, meaning high risk. We have crossed boundaries of biosphere integrity and biogenetical flows. That's nitrogen and phosphorus flows into biosphere and oceans. And both topics have one major common denominator: modern industrial agriculture, based on use of nitrogen and phosphorus as so-called artificial fertilizers. Modern agriculture is key driver not only of the biodiversity loss, but as well of deforestation and degradation of quality of water and soil worldwide. I would like to invite us to imagine how planetary overshoot can look like in a daily reality of ours. Still keeping focus on topic of agriculture and food consumption, as these relate to everyone and play a key role in Earth's ecosystem management. If we imagine where our food grows, this is what we might like to see: a diverse ecological production. And this is reality of monoculture. Oilseed rape field, nice color, otherwise it's a desert, because beside one variety that is resistant to pesticides, other life can be found just around that tree. And here's industrial approach to growing our food. And here back to recent reality. In October 2017, News informed us about a 75% decline of flying insect biomass in Germany over the last 27 years. And in March 2018, similar news come from France, seeing 2/3 of its bird population collapsing as insect population largely disappeared due to pesticides. We are losing traditional varieties of crops and plants too, as they don't fit into profit-oriented industrial system. Here's just an example from the US, where over 8 years, number of commercially used varieties dropped from hundreds to few varieties. Traditional agricultural seed varieties have indeed precious qualities, as they can cope with very diverse climate conditions. So to save them, there is Global Seed Vault built in Svalbard, Arctic. It's preserving a wide variety of seeds from almost every country in the world. Why is it important? Because loss of a crop variety is as irreversible as extinction of any form of life. And here is a simplified overview of key players of seed industry. Chemical companies producing both hybrid seeds that grow into plants that can't reproduce themselves, as the traditional varieties can't, and all the chemicals necessary for their treatment. For educators, the topic of modern industrial agriculture may be a distant one. However, in our daily life, we are constantly making choices related to food. Where does it come from? How was it produced? How much do we waste? Can we influence something here? In a world where 815 million people went hungry in 2017, a scandal of last couple of years was revelation that 1/3 of global food production gets wasted. What was missing was an acknowledgement that countries with strong purchasing power attract food across the globe, and by doing that, they cheaply buy precious resources such as water or land needed to grow this food, which is then missing somewhere. Here are just figures from statistics from global food trade, showing that 80% of the world's population uses almost 40% of all grain and animal protein of the world's production. And then around 30% of European locally grown vegetable comes from this place. It's Almeria, 30,000 hectares covered by greenhouses, operated by 100,000 migrant workers. As well, our diet, high on meat, relates us to use of land worldwide. The EU uses land size of Germany in South America just to grow feed for its animals in intense farming systems. Altogether, 1/3 of global agricultural land is used to grow feed for farm animals now. And if this trend continues, by 2050, 1/2 of the land will be needed. And then, looking which parts of world have highest average meat consumption level per capita, we can see similarities with those leading the planetary overshoot. To close this list, 50% of food in our supermarkets contains palm oil, which is the reason why Indonesia ranked among the biggest CO2 emitters in 2015, when massive fires due to land cleared for palm oil plantations started. So all what we've just seen can be understood as environmental impacts of global modern colonial imaginary, where being is reduced to knowing, where profits take precedent over people, where the earth is treated as a resource rather than a living relation, and where promises of states, markets, and Western reason are subsidized by the harms of impoverishment, genocide, and environmental destruction. So this is part of complex situation into which the UN introduced the Sustainable Development Goals in 2016. 17 goals to transform our world, aiming to end poverty, protect the planet and ensure prosperity for all by 2030. The SDGs follow idea of three pillars of sustainability: social, environmental, and economic, suggesting that economy can keep growing and this growth can be sustainable and green at the same time. However, there is a couple of studies on perspectives on green growth. The first study ran a model showing that under business as usual conditions, growth will drive global resource use to 180 billion tons per year by 2050. That's more than 3 times over the safe limit. A second study ran a model with optimistic assumption that every nation on Earth immediately adopts best practice in efficiency with all the best available technology, and the results were a bit better. We would end up hitting 93 billion tons per year by 2050. A third study found that even aggressive measures like a high carbon price and a doubling of technological efficiency don't help. If we keep growing the global economy by 3% each year, we are still at 95 billion tons by 2050. And finally, last year, the United Nations itself modeled a high carbon price, added a material extraction tax, and assumed rapid technological innovation. The results were 132 billion tons by 2050, which is even worse than the 2 previous studies found. And all these studies were using radically optimistic assumptions. But to come back to the SDGs, here is a model by Stockholm Resilience Center showing how could SDGs be understood differently. Economies and societies are seen as embedded parts of the biosphere. Our paradigm for development moves away from sectorial approach where social, economic, and ecological development are seen as separate parts. A world logic where the economy serves society so that it evolves within the safe operating space of the planet. And all the sustainable development goals are directly or indirectly connected to sustainable and healthy food. However, analysis of the same team showed that although ecosystems contribute to many SDG targets by providing food, water, air, pollination, habitats, and so on, their support by the SDG agenda is rather weak. As practical strategies, how ecosystems can be both protected and managed to support human well-being are not specified. So, working with SDGs as educators, we could ask, how fundamentally should our understanding to social, environmental, and economic dynamics transform to make this model really sustainable? Indeed, for example, agriculture can become regenerative, and economy can disconnect from extractionism. But that implies more radical reform. I look at SDGs as at an example of soft reform, trying to make the same system a little bit better through transformations of policies and practices, with horizon of single story of progress, development and evolution, and with hope for continuity. Asking same questions such as, what is the problem and how can we fix it? What should we do and how should we do it? What is happening? What strategies are effective? What knowledge expertise is missing? What challenges are faced? And how can I help? Quoting Vanessa Andreotti, we tend to believe that more data, knowledge will change our convictions, and the right convictions will change our behavior. This unexamined assumption is driven by our modern desires for certainty, coherence, consensus, and control. As long as unending growth and consumption are the only intelligible horizons of progress and hope, we are stuck in a place where the solutions of the past no longer fit our present challenges, but we are unable to imagine otherwise. And yet, we also know this is unsustainable. Educationally, this can be a generative opportunity. If addressed properly, this is precisely what might propel us towards alternatives that are viable but appear impossible within our current paradigms. So, with a recognition of dominant ways of knowing, we may shift towards radical reform, aiming to make the same world a lot better by including more people, voices and perspectives in collective action, with horizon of unification of many voices in a single direction, and with hope for fixing the system. Asking same questions, getting different answers. Whose bodies, voices are represented in what is perceived to be normal or natural? Who decides where forward is? In whose name, for whose benefit? How come? How are dissenting voices included or not? Whose terms of dialogue inclusion are in operation? What collective traumas are present? Whose vulnerabilities are visible and invisible? Why? Who has been historically and systematically negatively wounded? What side effects have emerged? What healing strategies have been employed? Who decides on the pace and remedy? What notions of authority, merit, credibility, normality, and entitlement are at work? What is being opposed and proposed as replacement? How am I connected to this struggle? How am I complicit in harm? How am I reading and being read? How to be an ethical ally, accomplice? Examples of more radical reform towards sustainability can be seen in agroecology and global food sovereignty movement. Agroecology is a regenerative approach to agriculture that United Nations are calling for, as a series of research prove that it is most likely the way how to feed 10 billion without exploiting the planet. Agroecology means a global shift from concentration of power by industrial agribusinesses to smallholder farmers and local communities. And in bigger scale, this can happen more easily in countries of the global south than in the EU countries, for example. Concentration of power of the industrial system is kept by several lock-ins, such as past dependency, measures of success, short-term thinking, or compartmentalized thinking. Each of these can be dismantled if agroecology gets public support and gets addressed and mainstreamed by education and policies, and new indicators for sustainable food systems are set. So agroecology and food sovereignty represent a paradigm shift in the social, political, productive and economic relations, are restoring a socio-cultural reality devastated by industrial food production, generating local knowledge, building social justice, strengthening the economic viability of rural and urban areas. People are exercising autonomy over their food systems, while concurrently ensuring that their production, distribution of food is carried out in socially just, culturally safe, and ecologically sustainable ways. And here comes an example from declaration at the Second International Symposium on Agroecology in April 2018 in Rome, read by Mariam Sue from Senegal. We women among us are not objects of policies that want to empower us, but rather are we active subjects of agroecology and guardians of biodiversity. We want our central role in food production and in the reproduction of life, as well as in the economy of our families and communities, to be visible and recognized. Agroecology means that our rights as women are protected and realized, not just as mothers and caregivers of our homes. Agroecology implies our full participation in the social and political life of our communities, ensuring our access to land, water, seeds, and means of production with autonomy and freedom. Our equal participation in decision-making spaces is essential. Another example of food sovereignty is being well developed by El Zapatista, creating autonomous, locally focused food system as direct product of their efforts in participatory democracy, gender equity and food sovereignty. with recognition that any struggle against colonialism and capitalism necessitates a struggle against patriarchy. Agroecological farming, place-based teaching and learning, developing local cooperatives, and engaging in collective work. These practices, informed by their indigenous customs, struggles for gender justice, and systems of non-hierarchical governance and education, have radically transformed social relations within Zapatista communities. So looking at the reform space, with a recognition of dominant ways of being, we may enter a beyond reform space, aiming to disinvest in the current unsustainable world and to walk with others into the possibilities of new worlds, with horizon of learning from repeated mistakes in order to make different mistakes, with hope for other systems. Asking different questions, expecting different answers. What is the nature of reality, self-consciousness, time, change, life, and death in this context? What cognitive, affective, relational, educational, healing, sensorial practices are possible from this cosmology? How is the possibility of my understanding, knowing, sensing, limited by my positionality, lack of socialization? What is this not knowing experience teaching me about possibilities I could never have imagined before? So the question of sustainability becomes an invitation to our collective imagination that can potentially remind us that it is possible to think about coexistence in very different ways than we are used to. Invitation to sit with the discomfort of facing the paradoxes, complexities, uncertainties, inequalities of globalization, as well as our complicities in harm, and to expand our sensibilities and constellations of knowledge and effect in order to expand possibilities for coexistence in a fragile planet.